a wonderful set of speakers that'll be engaging in some really provocative conversations with all of us about the current state of philanthropy and its future. You may have noticed something different about our name. We're now Neo-Philanthropy. So why the name change? Over the past 13 years, our work has evolved. We've created ways for funders of all types and in all parts of the country to work together and more strategically support social change work.
So we've worked with our donors to leverage their resources to support and build the capacity of not just individual groups, but of movements, and to support innovative strategies and leaders. We've also worked with them to develop a greater understanding of how issues intersect and to have more willingness to support allied organizations and build cross-issue and constituency support. We've opened doorways that have allowed funders to enter spaces to support the work they couldn't do alone or even within their own institutions.
We've created funds that are nimble enough to seize on strategic opportunities, but we also have funds that take the long view. And in light of what happened last night, we all have to take a long view of how change is going to happen. As we have grown, we've increasingly began to feel that our name did not adequately represent the way that we do philanthropy, which is creative, forward-thinking, and inspired.
So our rebranding is a way of helping our donors to better understand the value added that Neo-Philanthropy brings. Working with us means we have relationships with both grantees and with donors. We have a focus on intersectionality. We have a number of funds, and they all talk to each other, or at least the directors do. And of course, today's Breaking Out Institute. And while our name has changed, what hasn't is our commitment to delivering really high quality work, but also our focus on social justice. Social change has been and will always be at the core of why we do this work. Now, our reason for why we do what we do hasn't changed, but there's another why, and it's a more personal one. And I'll turn it to Michele so she can share her personal why.
So for me, nothing is more affirming of the path we've taken when we get out in the field and really visit the groups which we're supporting. This past summer, our staff led a donor tour that took place in Texas and Arizona that really focused on looking at the enforcement policies of our country. For me, this tour took me back to my first job after law school. This was in the early 80s, and I worked in Texas. Really ages me to say that, but I did, and I represented undocumented folks who were trying to file for asylum. I remember why I fled Texas horrified, worn down by the racism and the violence that impacted my clients on a daily basis and my inability to help them in any meaningful way. So standing next to Wendy Patton from OSF in the 110-degree heat at Sheriff Arpaio's tent city in Phoenix, watching a motel vacancy sign flashing on and off on the guard tower, and a total lack of defensiveness from the guards that were taking us on the tour, I was infuriated and speechless. And Wendy and I were both speechless, and if you know Wendy and I, that's kind of a rare event for us to be speechless. I realized how little had changed, since my work in the early 80s, but my disappointment and horror were then tempered by the groups we met on the tour. We sat down with leaders of organizations that we provided support for the last 13 years. The most meaningful folks we sat and spoke with were community members who were standing up to this harsh system on a daily basis, who despite daily deportations of their community members, their own family members, were not giving up. And their stories have been brilliantly told by Mark Silver in his film, Who is Diane Crystal? You'll hear from Mark in the next panel. The visit fueled the passion I feel for the work we do. The donors and I were reminded about just how vital the support we provide these folks are on the ground. Without the support we provide them for advocacy, for legal defense, for communications, for accountability, no one would know about the conditions in Sheriff Arpaio's jail. They wouldn't know who the inmates are, and they wouldn't even know how they got there. Nothing would change. So that reaffirmed for me why we do what we do. It's to provide critical strategic support for those who will not give up until this harsh system is taken down. For me and the donors, finding ways to hold on to the passion that helps us weather disappointment, setbacks, and failure, and be able to commit ourselves to the long haul is why we do this. this issue, which has preoccupied me for now 30 years, which is kind of sad but true. At times I feel pretty hopeless about it, but then I try to think about those family members we met in Texas and Arizona who are fighting every single day. Berta, I'll let you tell your story.
So I remember walking through my childhood neighborhood many, many years ago, looking up at the tied up sneakers that were thrown over power lines. It wasn't just one or two pairs, but literally tons of sneakers, every shape, every color, and they were streamed across these power lines. Now there's debate about what these sneakers represented, but in my particular neighborhood, these sneakers or a new pair went up every single time a kid was killed on the streets. They hung there. They were basically an urban banner publicizing the number of kids who died because of drugs, because of gang violence, or at the hands of cops. And so looking back, I guess I should have been more shocked at how many there were. But the reality is that it was just commonplace, right? I mean, no one even reacted with surprise. The reaction that the sneakers triggered was more, oh, who is it this time? Rather than why is there another pair up there? So that was over 30 years ago. And I'm struck by how little has changed. Sure, today we don't need those power lines with the sneakers anymore because we've gone mainstream, right? All we need to do is turn on the TV and you can see each day how many young people and young people of color are failed by our system each day. The impact of a society that criminalizes those who don't have access to economic and social opportunities in this country, it's just a staple of the evening news, just like those sneakers were a staple in my neighborhood. I don't need to describe the ways in which our system fails kids to all of you because I think all of you know it very well, in fact, a little too well. We're bombarded every single day with the many failings of our system: immigration, criminal justice, the plight of our schools. And as funders, I'm sure many, many of you have sat in front of a pile of proposals for organizations that are doing amazing work and of which you can only fund but a handful because of the lack of resources. Social change work is horribly, horribly under-resourced. The challenges are systemic, they're deep-rooted, and it's long-term to solve. We're not in need of passion or commitment for this work. The groups on the ground and all of you here in this room obviously have it. But what we need is innovation and creativity so that we can think differently about our work, so that we can better support the organizations that are doing this work on the ground and continue to fight this uphill battle. I hope all of you find that space here today. So be bold, be open, and be inspired. Thank you.
Thank you.